Today I'd like to look at one aspect of the argument from design. Now, I'm not going to go into any scientific explanations. I'm going to leave science and chance completely out of it. I just want to look at the use of analogy. And to do this, I'm going to refer to the watchmaker argument. The watchmaker argument will be quite familiar to all of you. It goes like this. The theist says, well, you're walking down a street and you see a watch on the ground. You pick the watch up, you examine it, and you see it's very complex, and you infer from that complexity that there must be a designer, a watchmaker. The theist then says you can apply this inference similarly to the universe. The universe is a very complex place. There's all this marvelous intricacy and complexity and beauty in it, and it must have had a designer. Nothing this complex could have come about purely by chance. This inference is not really a logical connection. I mean, fair enough. We look at a watch, and because we know a watch is a piece of machinery, we infer it must have had a watchmaker because we've seen similar machines before, and we think it must have had a designer, a human designer, because that's what we know. But this doesn't hold up for every complex object. I mean, let's take for instance a human being. We look at a human being and we think, wow, they're complex. They've got all these eyes and mouth and nose and all these internal organs that are very intricate and complex. But we don't think, someone must have made them from scratch. We think they must have had parents. They must have had two parents who got together, procreated, and created them. And we think this for all organic objects. Just in case anyone at this point is still saying, wow, your analogy still contains an intelligent creator, let me refer you to a vegetable. A vegetable is complex in its own right. It's got DNA, for God's sake. That's pretty complex. And we don't look at a vegetable and say, wow, that's so complex, it must have had an intelligent creator. We think it must have grown from something else. It's organic. It must have grown from a seed which came from another vegetable just like it. Now here's my question to you. What makes this one analogy better suited to the universe than the other analogy? What makes this machinery analogy more valid than the organic analogy? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think analogies prove anything, to be honest, but I could make the analogy I could use this organic analogy to explain the universe if I so wished, and still make the same inference that the watchmaker did. I could say, well, the universe is very complex, like an organic object. Why couldn't it have been born from another universe or something? To be honest, I think an organic inference, in some lights, could be viewed as more valid than the machinery argument. I mean, for goodness sake, organic life has been around for a lot longer than any kind of designed machinery. So why do some theists pick this watchmaker analogy over the organic analogy? It's simply to prove a point, I know, but there's no logical connection here. Now, I'm not advocating the organic analogy here. I don't think analogies prove anything simply because, as I've shown you, you can create another analogy to apply to exactly the same thing and prove a completely different point. And I realize I haven't gone into any depth about the design argument, but I hope I have shown you here that using analogy to try and prove a point doesn't actually make logical sense. If you think I've missed anything or not thought about something clearly enough, please leave me a comment or a response and I'll get back to you.